All right, so carrying on. So the rest of this today is, wait, now I need that one slide.
The next one?
Yes, this one. Piglet, how do you spell love? Who says you don't spell it? You feel it. That goes with that whole section too. You don't spell it, you feel it. Good. All right, so today we're doing Love is Who We Are. And I'm going to carry on now with what I'm going to call a definition of sorts from Ernest Holmes, our founder here. He's taking a biblical passage out of John, and then he's making his own interpretation of what he thinks it means. Okay? And I'm very clear to say interpretation of what he thinks it means. None of us know for sure. This is Ernest Holmes' interpretation of a biblical passage from John, and it's called love. He says, "It is written that God is love, and that we are God's expressed likeness, the image of the eternal being. Love is self-givingness through creation. Love is an essence, an atmosphere which defies analysis, as does life itself. It is that which is and cannot be explained. It is common to all people, to all animal life, and evident in the response of plants to those who love them. Love reigns supreme over all. The essence of love, while elusive, pervades everything, fires the heart, stimulates the emotions, renews the soul, and proclaims the spirit. Words cannot express its depths or meaning. A universal sense alone bears witness to the divine fact. God is love, and love is God." That's really a lot to say, but my favorite part is the part about love is self-givingness. That's something that I say all the time. That when I say what is love, I don't just think of the human emotion. I don't just think of the things that we do. I think of the givingness of the divine. And we cannot outgive that divine. That love is unconditional. It's the only love probably on this planet that is unconditional. As much as we try as humans, sometimes we get off course with that unconditional love. But God's love, I've learned to count on that love. Being unconditional without any need for me to do anything to please something supposed to be without there, outside of me, because it's not. It's right here. And it's giving to me always. Doesn't matter what I do. Doesn't matter what you do. Sometimes we screw up. Sometimes we're not unconditional. But we are still loved that way. And isn't that a good thing? It's a good thing. We are always given unconditionally. And I say a lot of times that God gave us life. So whatever we say that God is, whatever we feel that God is, we must be that. And we say here that God is love, that we are made from love. The key that I've learned is that it's not about trying to make ourselves more lovable. It's not about trying to make ourselves more loving. The key is to get rid of everything that is blocking that truth. So if who we are is love to begin with, then all the stuff that has been put on needs to dissolve away. Because we have a lot of old messages saying otherwise. Saying that, who are you to say that you are love? Who are you to say that you are part of God's love? We say that we are already loving and lovable. That right here, how we are, as we are lovable. And so what we want to do, that key, is we want to wash away, subtract, if you will, the untruths so that we can reveal the truths. And so I put it in writing so we can actually see it. If nothing else that we take home with us today, this is what I would love us to take home. Subtracting the untruths reveals the truth. Think in your own mind, what might be the untruths? The messages that said we weren't good enough. The messages that said, who are you to be magnificent, like we talked about last week. The messages that somehow you weren't loving or that you weren't deserving of love. Those are the untruths I'm talking about. The things that maybe churches or parents, in well-meaning ways, had us believing that somehow we had to earn that love. That's what I mean by the untruths. The things that happened to us, maybe when we were little, those are untruths. And so we want to subtract the untruths. Rather than trying to get the truth, you see, We don't want to get the truth of love. We already are it. We want to subtract the untruths that are blocking it, so that once again the truths may be revealed. That is my number one point today. If you take nothing home with you, I invite you to anchor that somehow inside of you. That you do not have to get more lovable, but rather to release what is not loving, which is not your truth. Can you just kind of anchor that inside? I'm subtracting the untruth so that I may reveal the truth. As we do that, call to mind the Whitney Houston song of the 1990s. Do you remember what she said? Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. We hear that all the time. Not always easy to do. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. I'll be the first one to tell you that that's not always easy. And I'm sure you're right there with me because of those things I mentioned that we were taught. We weren't taught necessarily how to do it. Maybe some of us were, but Mary Faith, who's not in here today. Mary Faith was taught how to do that. She was one of the blessed ones who grew up in this kind of teaching. Carol Barber and Bob Gordon, they probably grew up with some of that as well. A lot of us didn't grow up with that. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. We want to focus on the importance of that. Why is that so important? Why is it so important to love myself? What I know is that when I don't love myself, I can't love anybody else. Those are not just trite words. They are visceral. When I don't love me, I can't love anybody else. You know, it's this thing we said about the abundance program. We can't give what we don't have. We can't give what we don't have. And so, yes, I can feel, and so can you, love of another that feels like it's out there. We love people, so it feels like that love is out there. But really, that love is not genuine unless it's in here, is what that's saying. Otherwise, it becomes people-pleasing. Trying to love somebody else. Or it becomes obsessive, trying to get them to love us. True loving of somebody is coming from the inside. So learning to love ourselves is the greatest love of all. It's worth every ounce of effort that we make to love ourselves. The only way I know how to start loving myself is to go back to the first source. To go back to the idea that God is love. To go back to the idea that this presence is right here where I am. I can love myself. Why? Because I'm a child of God. I can love myself. Why? Because God became me. I can love myself just simply because God is love and I must be too. Simply remembering again over and over and over, who am I? So that I have it to give to others. Now every time I do a talk on love, I know it's a struggle for some who have dealt with that people-pleasing that I mentioned. Who have dealt with loving means I must always say yes to another person. You don't have to raise your hand, but I know there's some of us in the room. I know I'm not the only one because I hear the struggles. Being loving does not mean accepting another person's unwanted behavior. They do not go together. I struggled with this, and I know a lot of people who struggle with this, the whole idea. Being kind and being loving and being nice does not mean you're anybody else's doormat. So we need to be strong enough in that own love, in our own love, to know what that feels like for us. I did a workshop a couple years ago, and I'm going to do it again at the request of my ladies group, who says you need to do that again. It's called Gracefully Saying No. Gracefully Saying No addresses this exact thing. That just because I say no doesn't mean I don't love you. Sometimes you must say no to take care of yourself. Sometimes we must say no to place a boundary that says no. I'm loving me, and so this doesn't get to happen. I spent years, and I do it like this in a humorous way. I look inside, and I check within. And I ask myself for years, are you unkind? I used to think so. I used to think that if I said no, that meant I was unkind. What I have now learned is that loving the God self that I am does not mean that I have to say yes to everybody all the time. It does not take away 1 ounce of the love that I am. But I don't have to be somebody else's doormat. That's really important on a very